Martin, do you want to do an introduction?
Yes, yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining or listening through our YouTube channel or LinkedIn. Welcome to the presentation about natural language processing. This is the addition to our previous presentation about investment management and deception. If you have not watched it yet, please head to our YouTube channel. Jason is now going to present known behavioral differences between deceivers and truth tellers as found by deception science. Thank you very much, Jason, for sticking with us. And now there is nothing else left for me than to hand it over to you, Jason.
Perfect.
Jason,
Thank you.
please take
Thank
it
you,
away.
Martin. And I don't have prepared remark. I have prepared remarks, but I don't have a prepared presentation, only because this is such an emerging field that I'm not, and we participate in this space, and I'll reveal how in just a second. So what I'm going to do first, in order of the presentation, is to share some numbers with you that we have found in our own work at Deception and Truth Analysis that I hope to convince the investment managers that are listening to this recording that they ought to be exploring natural language processing and incorporating it into their investment decision-making process. And I'll share some of the reasons why. And the good news is I really feel that we are in the very beginnings of what is likely to be a huge revolution in asset management that may take 30, 40, 50 years to fully realize. And I don't speak in hyperbole or exaggerate very frequently. In fact, my colleagues criticize me frequently that I'm the hardest person to have make a happy statement about anything because I tend to be very metered. But I do believe that. And I'm old enough now to remember when the internet first was birthed in the early 1990s. 1992, 1993 is when the web started happening. The internet had been around for 30 years previously, but the web and graphical user interfaces used on websites is what made them widely accessible to the general public. And I think relative to the internet, we're at about 1995 level right now with natural language processing, both in society, but especially in investment management. And so I think there's very rich and deep opportunity for asset managers that start to look at natural language processing incorporated into their investment process. And I'll share why in just a second. So a little bit about us, just so you understand that I'm speaking from an authoritative position about natural language processing. And by the way, on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of expert, relative to my research team and the PhDs that we've worked with, I am probably about a 6, right? There are people who are absolutely at the 10 level who can do shockingly crazy things with natural language processing. I'm 6, so, but on the amateur scale, I'm probably a 10, right? So relative to amateurs, I'm probably a 10. On the expert level, I'm probably about a 6. So take this with a grain of salt. So deception and truth analysis, we are grounded in deception science. And deception science is a space that's more than 100 years old with 8,000 papers to support a body of knowledge where scientifically behavioral differences between deceivers and truth tellers have been researched. Those differences are linguistic and behavioral primarily. And so one of the things that you can do with natural language processing is to measure behavior, whereas previously it's very difficult to measure behavior in a quantifiable way. It's tended to be the case that it's a very soft skill, and you would, after a conference call, say, what did you think of that call? I think the call went really well. I saw Martin smiling at various points when I said things. I could see people's enthusiasm and the tone of their voice increased and the pace of their speaking, increased, et cetera, et cetera. It was squishy, right? It wasn't quantifiable. So deceptive behavior is one of the things that you can measure using natural language processing. And that's where I'm primarily expert. However, I've also conducted research, and my team has conducted research at measuring other behaviors. And this is where it gets especially fascinating. Here's why. This is the first statistic I'm going to share with you. And if I could share no other statistic with you about natural language processing and investment management, it's this one. 98.3% of the communications coming from companies is in words, not numbers. Only 1.7% of annual reports, quarterly reports, call transcripts, and all of the other material that companies generate are numbers. Yet almost all of the analytical tools that we have been spent developing tools on that very narrow slice of output from companies. And everybody knows those techniques. I have not seen an innovation evaluation since options pricing being used to price real options, and that was almost 30 years ago that was a pioneering technique to be used. The narrow slice of information that's contained in numbers is uh, not worth looking at to generate alpha. I think it's table stakes information that you should look at. You have to look at it. You can't be caught unaware of a detail that's in an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, or that was shared with you in an earnings call. But I think there's almost no alpha available there. So the second thing I'm going to share with you, besides the fact that only 1.7% of information is contained in numbers, is the following. We have found in our own work long-tailed predictability of negative outcomes financially in businesses. So most notably, when we look at scandals, the top 10 largest scandals of all time, costing investors almost $500 billion, we're able to predict those scandals with 6.2-year lead times. That's very strange, and it was wholly unexpected by me when our team discovered that that was the case. And I'll go to some of why I think that's true in just a moment. But we also maintain a scandals data set of other types of scandals, not just financial scandals. These are situations in which public figures have misstated something, like politicians, for example. It includes data sets, in our data set includes people spoofing to be serial killers to the police because they want the attention and thus misdirect police resources to looking for the wrong suspect based on what's been shared with them by people spoofing to be serial killers. In any case, we're also able to predict with very high certainty those different types of scandals. So take it out of the financial domain. We're able to measure the behavior that's present and oftentimes years before law enforcement and others. In the case I'm talking about with Wareside Jack relative to the Yorkshire Ripper, which is what I was just referring to with the serial killer, 3 years ahead of Peter Sutcliffe, the actual Yorkshire Ripper, being caught, we were able to identify the Wareside Jack statements, look it up on the web, that they were fake, that they should not have been trusted by police. So that would have saved the UK police 10 million pounds of investigation dollars, and sadly, the lives of 6 women who were murdered by the Yorkshire Ripper. The Yorkshire police interviewed Peter Sutcliffe, the actual murderer, 9 separate times, but let him go because his behavior wasn't the same as the person who was spoofing who he was to the press. So there are long lead times available to you. The next thing I'll share with you is that various researchers have found that there's latent signal in measuring behaviors in the financial documents, annual reports, quarterly reports, call transcripts, in those comms, and they're predictive of future stock price outcomes. Earlier, for CFA Society Slovakia, I shared that our own independent validation work done by CloudQuant found that there's signal in what we do up to 80 trading days later or 4 months later. Other researchers have found signal up to a quarter later. So why is this? And why is it important to look at the behaviors as revealed by the language in a scientific, systematic way using natural language processing? This is my theory, and it's just a theory. It could be tested empirically. I just have not had the time to do it. Most of us look at the outcomes as represented by numbers as investment professionals, but those numbers are driven by choices of management, right? Which new research items to direct R&D dollars to, which new markets to enter, how many people to hire, what types of people we're going to hire, 401k plans, other pension plan incentives. How they allocate capital is driven by choices, but in turn, those choices are driven by their behaviors. So behaviors lead to choices. Those choices lead to the outcomes. If you have a way of examining the behaviors, that's why you see these lead times of 6 years in identifying scandal. It's because scandalous behavior was present years prior to it actually showing up in the numbers. So that's why you should be using natural language processing to evaluate behaviors. So what types of behaviors can you examine? And for us, it's obviously that you can examine deceptiveness, but I made a list of other behaviors that can scientifically be measured with high reliability. Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, sadism. That sounds like, okay, those are like serial killer type things. Auditors around the world have found that those behaviors, known as the dark tetrad, are predictive of future financial scandal on the part of companies if you can find that those behaviors are present in the auditors, both internally and externally, that cover a company. But those can be measured accurately. Other things, the level of anxiety that somebody is experiencing. You can make estimations as to the gender of a speaker. You can make estimations as to the age of the speaker. You can even make guesses as to who authored whole sections of documents, like in an annual report, based on speaking style. And we're literally at the very beginnings of this revolution. We are maybe 5 years into this kind of technique being used to extract behaviors. And by the way, the techniques are accelerating so fast that I can barely keep up with them. And my research team pings me with new scientific papers almost weekly that have been authored that are measuring new behaviors and in new ways. So as an asset manager, you have the rare opportunity to be at the beginnings of a revolution, begin to extract value for your investors by using natural language processing. So those are my comments, and I urge each of you to begin to examine the subject. It's rare that you get to be early in something that's revolutionary. Happy to take any questions as well.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Yeah, just like Jason said, this is the time to ask questions. Short Q&A, and we would wrap it up. Okay, if there are no questions, thank you very much to everyone for your time. If you liked our video, please leave us a comment and or click the like button. This is it. This is it for today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next videos. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you.